Hey, Christian, how you doing?
Try to figure out why the volume keeps going down to this stupid thing.
It's probably picking up that bird.
Maybe. I'm doing great, man. How are you?
I am probably not as good as you because you have just gotten back from, where'd you go, Cabo?
Cabo, Mexico.
Cabo Wabo?
Not just Cabo. Cabo San Lucas.
Not Cabo Wabo.
No.
They don't call it that anymore?
Isn't that an 80s band or something?
I feel like I always heard that term Cabo Wabo on MTV. Remember MTV?
I think it's still around. I mean, they don't do music anymore.
I just remember Kurt Loder.
Yeah, yes, Kurt Loder.
That guy could do anything.
Yeah, he's good.
Well, we've got a very obnoxious and loud bird that decided to join us for our podcast. So that is what you are hearing. But we are back, excited to record another episode of the Old Fashioned Dad podcast. What we do here on this excellent podcast, if you're not aware of this, is we go into deep topics while drinking whiskey and smoking cigars. And now we have a bird tapping. Perfect. This bird is annoying.
It's okay.
Anywho,
If you guys can hang with us and not be that annoyed, I'm sure a bird won't.
we're not a podcast that is operating in somebody's backyard, right? Right?
Definitely not. This is a professional studio.
It is a professional studio. These are all sound effects that you hear.
That's right.
These are cued in by our producer. So, at any rate, we do have a episode to record here. It'll be a good one as always because all the episodes are really good.
All good.
Yeah. So, as always, why don't we jump into the whiskey and the cigar? Here we go. We are the Old Fashioned Dad podcast, seeking to love dads and men through the person and work of Jesus Christ, while entering into tough conversations on marriage, mental health, sex, and parenting, all while sipping good whiskey. So, Christian, welcome back to America.
Thank you, Christian.
I hope that your time abroad was, is that right? Abroad? I hope abroad it was magnificent.
It was pretty spectacular. Went down to Cabo for a real estate mastermind event. The nice thing about this particular event is that they only scheduled speakers in the morning and the afternoons were intentionally free. So I brought my wife. We made a vacation out of it. A lot of time by the pool, a lot of margaritas, some sunsets, sunrise, walks on the beach.
Wow.
It's pretty great. I almost felt like no one was wearing masks. I almost felt like it was, life was normal.
This kind of sounds like a ad for eHarmony, what you just described.
Is eHarmony still around?
It might be. I'm not sure. Or Tinder.
Tinder, yeah.
Tinder, yeah. So okay, so long walks on the beach,
Yep.
sipping margaritas by the pool, a lot of pool time. Is this how real estate agents live?
The successful ones.
Wow.
And I'm getting there. I'm getting there. So one of the big ideas with this is, going and surrounding yourself with big thinkers, with people who are not just financially successful
You
in
said
life.
thinkers, right?
Thinkers, yeah.
Thinkers.
What do you think I said?
Big thickers.
Big thinkers. I don't know what that is.
I don't either.
Big thinkers.
That's why I had to clarify. Big
Yeah.
thinkers.
Big thinkers. People that are, living life personally and professionally, where you want to be. And obviously it's not just about the money, there's a big focus on remembering why we do the things we do, why we're working. Surprisingly, a good number of the speakers were overt Christians.
Wow.
Which
That's
I
a nice
guess
plus.
I guess they could, which I guess considering the culture of my brokerage, EXP Realty, that it doesn't really surprise me because they're very servant leader forward, which is definitely a outgrowing of the gospel.
Forward.
So it's always about like providing value, helping other agents, collaborating. Even if they end up staying at the current brokerage they're at, there's still a collaborative nature. And I think it's just built into the model as opposed to the traditional brokerage model, which is really everyone in your office and everyone else is a competitor, not a collaborator. So anyway, it was pretty awesome. I mean, one of the speakers, the guy who put on the event, he was talking about how the things we kind of strive for, and he's saying some of you need this, some of you need that, some of you need Jesus Christ to turn your marriage around. to help you not be an alcoholic. I'm just like, wow,
It's a solid word right there.
Yeah. And then there's like another speaker that was talking about they owned a massive real estate brokerage before they moved over to the current one they're at, and they're talking about how it was really tough for them because part of their mission is seeing this 900 person real estate brokerage as their mission field. Wow. Like it's their way of sharing the gospel and loving people through business.
Wow.
And they're saying this from the stage in front of 500 other agents, like super high producing successful people.
Clearly they're taking it like a ministry perspective.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. So, but anyway, I mean that's not what we're here about. But anyway, I'm stoked. Just kind of reinvigorated.
We are about dads, and
we are.
You're a dad.
I'm a dad.
And a man.
And a man.
I feel like that needs to be said.
Okay.
Yeah. We make clear distinctions here on the Old Fashioned Dad podcast. You're a man.
I'm a man. Yep.
So, we do have an episode to get to, right?
Yes, we do.
And we are hopefully going to try and dissect a little bit about what it means or what it looks like for when a man loses his temper.
Loses his shit.
Loses his ever-loving mind. I was going to put in another word there, but...
That's never happened to me.
For all those kids out there that are listening, why are you listening, by the way?
They're preparing to become a man.
Yeah. But we're going to talk about that. And what better way to do that than over the whiskey? The whiskey.
The whiskey. What is the whiskey
The
we're
whiskey
drinking?
and the cigar. So, the whiskey, actually I've been holding on to this bottle for roughly a year. Because I'm like, well, I don't know if it's going to be any good, but that's just me. I'm a weird collector like that. But the whiskey is Wild Turkey Rare Breed. And so far I've actually really digging the taste on it.
It's tasty.
Yeah. There we go. I don't know if you can see that.
Closer.
Boom.
Closer.
Boom.
Yeah.
Look at that. Right there. Wild Turkey Rare Breed out of Kentucky. Kentucky. I think it's Kentucky. So this isn't... Wild Turkey has gotten a kind of a bad rap over the many decades that it's been around. It kind of, in the 80s, 90s, became a kind of bottom shelf whiskey, bourbon. But it's been kind of revitalized over the last 10 or 15 years, maybe 20 years. Really 10 or 15 years. With Matthew McConaughey, I don't know if you've seen those commercials and those ads.
How can you not?
Yeah.
He's a handsome man.
all right. But at any rate, so Wild Turkey Rare Breed is just an expression in their line of whiskey. This one's barrel proof, so it's coming in at
116.
Almost 117 proof, so not for the faint of heart. And we're going to pair it with some cigars today. Now, I don't know if I told you this.
You did not tell me.
And I'm going to tell all our listeners and our viewers this. I had the Rona.
I didn't know that, sorry.
I had the Rona. It's not a food dish. It's not something you go order at a restaurant or anything like that. COVID.
Yeah, but you're better now.
I am better now.
Yep.
I am better. I can actually smell the cigar, whereas last week I could not smell anything. So I've regained smell, which is a lot quicker than I've heard most people regain their smell. So I'm very excited about this to be having a Arturo Fuente, kind of Churchill cigar.
Yeah, it's a good size.
What are you smoking there?
I am smoking a Rocky Patel.
How's it working out for you?
Vintage 1999 Connecticut.
Ooh.
Which I believe is also a size, correct? Connecticut?
Connecticut is the wrapper. And this would be, I think, more of a Toro because it's a little bit more medium in length.
Sure.
So it has a Connecticut wrapper, I believe.
Shows you how much I know.
This is all I've learned.
It's a good thing we're not a cigar podcast.
The Honest Cigar Experience, feel free to kick our ass.
Yeah, they're shaking their heads right
They're
now.
like, what in the world?
Sorry, fellas.
Yeah, sorry to let you guys down. So a couple of things have happened to me while you were enjoying your stay at Cabo.
Okay.
So I got the Rona, but in the order of events that happened, I broke my hand.
It just snapped. You're sitting there and all of a sudden, my hand.
It was a sleep injury, I think. You know, when you turn 40, things just start injuring you that are really benign. And so sleep, I was injured.
Yeah, sleep got you.
It became the enemy of me. No, I broke my hand, in full transparency, by punching my front door.
What did your door ever do to you? You're a door abuser, Christian.
I am a door abuser. And maybe we should file a police report. Or maybe the door should file a police report. I don't know.
This is so bad. It's all right, guys.
But
so what are we talking about today? What does this have to do with?
yeah, I'm going to get there. But
there.
we gotta you know.
It's a slow walk.
It's a slow burn here.
Okay.
So I punch my front door, break my hand, go to the ER, end up going in for a orthopedic consult. They say you can either do surgery or not surgery. And so I said, well, let's go surgery because it sounds like my healing time would be reduced a lot. So I did. I went and got major surgery. I got a steel rod put in my hand here. It's got a cool scar, so that's pretty neat.
So what part of your hand did you break? Like,
I got what's called a boxer's fracture. So I broke this knuckle right here.
the pinky knuckle.
Pinky knuckle.
Okay.
I had lots of people giving me all kinds of advice on what to do next time. And I thought to myself, there isn't going to be a next time. So.
Next time for what? The next time you punch something?
Next time I punch something.
You didn't punch it out of anger, did you?
Well.
Is that what we're going to talk about today?
We might. We might get into that.
Okay.
So I went and I got my surgery and then promptly got coronavirus, which I'm pretty sure I got during surgery.
Probably during your ER visit, but...
well, the ER visit, I wore my mask the whole time. And
that's 100%, you know.
It works 100% of the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but the surgery, they took off my mask.
20% of the time, it works 100% of the time.
20% of the time, it works every time. So, lots of this bad decision led to an unfortunate COVID in my life, which I am happy to say coronavirus free. Okay, so what are we talking about today? And why I had to share all that is because talking about dudes losing their tempers.
Never done it. Never happened.
Yeah. So I pride myself quite often on being a man that holds himself together. That there is there's the amount of stress and chaos and, chaos is a good word, that the average man can handle.
Okay.
And I often think of myself as above average. Maybe every man thinks of himself that way. But I think I can handle way more stress and way more responsibilities and whatnot. Well, I reached a point where my ability to cope with all the stuff that I'm doing got compromised. And instead of making a good decision, I reacted aggressively towards my front door. Punched it so hard. I punched it with the intent of breaking through the front door like I was the Hulk.
Really, a solid oak door.
I'm not saying that I'm being very rational here, because one thing that we know for sure with anger is that you completely lose all sense of rationality.
Yeah, thinking is not a characteristic of being angry.
My thought in the moment was, there's that front door. Darn it, it shouldn't be there. I'm going to destroy it. And if you looked at my front door right now, you would never have known that it was ever punched. Ever. Ever. But then you look at my hand, and you're like, man, that front door destroyed your hand.
Yeah. Front door 1, Christian 0.
Yeah, pretty much.
What, I don't know if you want to get into this. I mean, what...
We can get into it.
What set you off? Was like a
therapy
argument?
for me today.
Was it a fight with your wife, or was it just kind of like a combination of everything, all the stresses behind the scenes in your life coming to a head? Or
So I've had a lot of people ask me this question.
Okay. And you've lied to all of them.
I've given them a myriad of responses. We'll say that.
Okay.
That's the very diplomatic way. I've given them a myriad of responses.
But we're not diplomatic on this podcast. We are raw and transparent.
We are full raw on this thing.
Full raw.
Yeah. So honestly, it's not one particular incident that led me to punch my door. Like I wasn't living in a day-to-day life where I'm just kind of like I'm about ready to explode. But there's a lot of responsibilities that I have that have kind of accumulated.
Okay. So you hit a tipping point.
I hit a tipping point. And the tipping point that kind of happened in this particular moment was my daughter lost her bearded dragon.
Oh, I hate it when my daughter... Wait, I don't have a daughter or a bearded dragon. Okay.
Which explains why you have a non-broken hand.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's why we have cheap hollow core doors in our house, so I don't have to risk breaking my hand when I punch them.
And I'm going to install that next time. So, my daughter lost her bearded dragon. It was hanging out on her bed, or our bed where she was with her while she was watching TV, and then it scurries off the bed and to who knows where. It's a bearded dragon. It's like 2 feet long, but blends in with everything. And so it had been a fairly long week. We're building a house and doing all the stuff that goes into building a house, and all the stress and the emotions that were happening within our marriage. My wife was not handling a couple of things very well, and so I was having to walk her through that. So I looked at my wife while we were tearing our house apart to find this bearded dragon, and I said, I'm going to pop. I'm going to pop. And she said very lovingly but very firmly, you need to get out right now. Because she knew exactly what I meant by I'm going to pop. And so I walked from our back room to our kitchen space, and in that span of time, the frustration and anger level reached the critical mass, and I saw the front door, and I said, without even hesitating, I'm going to punch you as hard as I can. And I did.
You actually said that? Like verbally?
In my mind.
Oh, okay.
I said that in my mind.
Okay.
And so I punched it as hard as I could, and the instant my fist hit the front door, I knew exactly what I had just done. And I knew exactly what this was going to cost me. So I've had a lot of time to reflect on this, and I've also had a lot of time to talk to people, because when you walk around with a cast on your hand, people ask you, what'd you do?
Yep.
What did you do? So there's honestly been a lot of shame wrapped up in this. There's been a lot of shame wrapped up in this because people want to hear kind of this heroic story, or they want to hear like, you know,
defending my wife's honor.
Yeah, exactly. Or some kind of tragedy that happened. And
Nope.
I was like,
just being a dumbass.
Nope. My dumbass punched the front door. And most of the time, the response I get has been, shut up, serious? That's the response. Most of the time, that's the response I get.
So people don't know you that well. Because I was like, oh, yeah, totally makes sense.
Yeah, so people are like, no, shut up, are you serious? I was like, yep. And then the follow-up question is, why would you do that? And I was like, because I'm a dumbass. Huh. Because I'm dumb. That's. But what's interesting is there has been some condemnation and some judgment that I've gotten from some people. They're like, well, that was a dumb thing to do. Why would you ever do that? And I'm like, you've never lost your temper? You've never gotten angry? You've never gotten to the place where you've been overwhelmed and like your decision making and your rationality hasn't been compromised before? And they're like, well, I've never punched a front door.
Yeah,
I'm like,
I kick my dog when I get home from work, but that's not the same thing.
Yeah, I yell at my kids, but I don't punch doors. Okay.
So they just deal with it in another sinful way.
Yeah. My father, being the eloquent man that he is, actually I do think he's eloquent. He's like, well, we're Irish, so you didn't beat your wife. And you didn't beat your kids, and you didn't go on a drunken tirade, so you're actually doing pretty well for the Irish.
Okay.
So I was
always
like,
looking at the bright side. I
appreciate the silver lining, Dad.
Yeah.
I really appreciate the silver lining while I'm holding my hand and it's, crippled. So there's been a lot of shame and lessons learned here, but it's made me reflect on how did I get to where I got, and losing my temper as a guy. Do you think other guys deal with this where they lose their temper?
No, we're the only one.
Man.
Only one.
I'm in a very, very small minority, I guess, that I don't have it together. So this has been, I think that the hard part is, like, I've got a physical scar now. I can look at my hand. I know exactly, how I got here. It's a reminder that I do not have this together. I don't have it together.
Yeah, sometimes we need that humbling. Especially if you go around feeling like you're above average when comparing yourself to other men, which I guess is maybe a common thing. I mean, maybe people who are like average are below average. Maybe they think they're above average too. I don't know.
I think you're above average.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I do too, but it's because I have an ego. No, I don't know. I mean, I think based off of my experience in relationship with other men, I think losing your cool is not a uncommon characteristic of men. Now, how we respond to that, whether we punch doors or hold it inside, and we're just, you know, our and our health is impacted because of it, or you know, pretty much any way we deal with it, except for going to God and asking forgiveness and actually dealing with our control issues and whatever else is leading us to that tipping point. You know,
Well,
I don't think there's any like punching a door is any, you know, less bad or sinful than yelling at your kids or having a bad attitude or whatever. Like, it's all
it's kind of the heart. It's kind of the heart behind the action.
Yeah, they're all wrong responses that reveal that we're not being dependent on God.
Yeah,
that we're not trusting God.
And I think that's a good place to go. I've been so when I went to the ER, I had all like male nurses and male doctors, and the male X-ray techs. Mm-hmm. They brought me back, and they go, "So you punched the door, huh?" And I was like, "Yep."
So they've seen that before.
Yeah, you punched the door. Yep. And then immediately followed up with, "And you're how old?" And I was like, "Yep, yeah." I was like, "Yeah, hindsight's 20/20. I get it." But then when I was finally back getting my hand splinted, I had male doctor and male nurse, and they were kind of excited. You know, it was weird. They were kind of like, maybe excitement's the wrong word, but the male nurse for sure, he was like, "Man, you punched the hell out of that door. You broke your hand." He was really kind of pumped.
He's jazzed.
And I don't know if it was simply because all he's seen is like COVID patients, and you know, here's this dumbass, you know, guy in his 40s that, you know, punched the door, broke his hand, and so it was like kind of a new case for him. He's like, "Oh, a little something out of the norm," you know. But he was like, each guy that saw me, he's like, "Yeah, man, we've all been there. We've all been there." And I've received that from every single like male medical personnel that I've dealt with. We've all been there.
Sure.
And I'm like, have you? Have we? Have we been there? Like, you've punched a door?
Maybe they're talking about the feeling that led to that, the frustration that led to that. I don't know. That's interesting. Huh. Because I mean, I know we've talked about anger before and kind of emotions that guys are allowed to have, and obviously, you know, I think society expects men to be angry. You know, like that's an acceptable emotion. I
mean, I don't know if there's any emotion that's honestly acceptable for men, but because it seems like we get in trouble with really any emotion that we show. But it seems like anger is the one that I think society is most comfortable with, even though they're not comfortable with it.
Yeah.
So, where do we go with all this?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah, so I like how you're bringing in God. We want to do that on the Old Fashioned Dad podcast because we're not just about trusting in pop psychology and behavior modification. What do we do with that? How do we, you know, what's the ultimate lesson here? Now, I've been reflecting a lot on, you know, how does this event that I've done to myself, what does that say about my trust in God? And what does that say about how I listen to God? Because are there potential things that, like, I took too much on that in a chain reaction led up to this? You know, and the Holy Spirit along the way was telling me, probably don't do this. Don't take this on. Don't get involved in this. Had I listened, would I be where I am right now? I don't know. But I think about the verse, Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge Him, and He will direct your paths. Mm-hmm. And I've been thinking about that as it pertains to me, men, husbands, fathers, single dudes. And so I've kind of dissected the verse a little bit, and I hope it has some relevancy and some connection here. If it doesn't, please stop me.
Oh, I will.
Good. But sit and smoke your cigar while I dissect and exegete this.
All right, good luck.
Boom.
Go.
So trust in the Lord with all your heart. Okay, let's take that piece just for a second. Did I do that? Have I done that? Trust in the Lord with all my heart. In this particular instance, I don't think I did. I don't think I did. I think that trusting the Lord with all your heart really is like centering your whole day and your whole life around who God is. And He is the one that makes your day go. He is the one that says, go here, go there, do this, do that. And I don't think I was doing that. Okay, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. I think it's really typical for me, and I would venture to say for many guys, that they're going to lean on their own understanding.
It's kind of our default.
Yeah. Yeah, and oftentimes the excuse is, well, hey, that's just the way I'm built. That's the way I'm built.
So, I mean, how do you, not to interrupt your exegesis here, but, I mean, how do you not lean on your own understanding?
The best way that I know how to not lean on my own understanding is to be just immersed in God's Word, to be immersed in church community and relationships that are godly, and to be reliant upon prayer the same way that I'm reliant upon food and water to survive. That's the only way that I know how to lean not on my own understanding. If I'm hoping to lean not on my own understanding by simply behavior modifying it, I think I'm going to, it'll be like punching a front door hoping for a different outcome each time. Why does this still hurt? Why am I breaking my hand? I in my heart, I want to change. In my head, I'm telling myself to change, but I keep coming up with a broken hand and bloody knuckles.
Yeah, I mean, I think to that point, you know, when we're not leaning on God, because as adults, you know, we've got a little more self-control and discipline, and we're real big on behavior modification.
Huge.
We may our heart may still be burning with anger and rage, but we just say, hey, this won't look good if I break my hand again.
Yeah.
You know, that was really painful. I'm just going to hold it in, or I'm going to do something else instead, when we haven't really dealt with what's causing that anger and rage and tipping point for us.
Yeah. And I know as men, like what leads men, and specifically me, leads me to these tipping points is the belief that I can do most things, the belief that I can take on most things, and that I can handle most things, and I can stand up and be a man, and almost in a way deny my limitations.
Almost like you're trying to be your own God, unlimited power and capabilities.
But I would never ever say that, because when I say out loud, I'm my own God, it sounds crazy.
It sounds ridiculous.
It absolutely sounds ridiculous and crazy, but that's exactly what's happening.
But practically, a lot of us live that way.
No, practically, that is exactly how we live. Like, if we need to, live any other way, it's to live as if God is the center of our lives, not we are the center of our lives.
Well,
but this is what men do.
It actually is. Yeah.
But this is what we as men do. We live as if we're the center of our lives, but we always do it under the guise of like, whoa, I'm providing.
Sure. Yeah, I got to be the strong provider. But the caveat to that is under the lordship and submission of God, under the dependence of Jesus.
But we don't like to say that piece, under the lordship and the submission to Jesus.
Yeah, it requires humbling ourselves, and men aren't great at that.
No, we're not.
I mean, humanity's not great at that.
We're good at throwing people under the bus, as you see with Adam and Eve. We're really great at that, and we're really great at abdicating our responsibility. Mm-hmm. We're great at that, and we're really good at getting angry, as you see a lot of men in the Bible. One classic example, Cain and Abel. Cain didn't like what Abel did, so it's like, well, I'm really angry. I'm going to murder you. Sure.
One generation in, murder's introduced.
Yeah. It took us like 5 seconds to figure out how to get angry and murder somebody.
Yeah. Do you want to get back to the exegesis of that scripture, or? I
mean, maybe. But if you have another thought, no, I do. I wanted to finish up the one piece. So,
okay. Yep.
So, lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge Him. So you've got these three main points, like these kind of three calls to action. So trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding, and then in all your ways acknowledge him. So the acknowledging him piece. So this is something that I don't know that I was actively doing. Like, I'd like to think that I'm actively doing it, but even I'm bad at my own kind of self-assessment of my actions. You know, like I have to have people in my life that can say like, hey dude, it seems like you're kind of approaching maximum capacity on what you're doing. It seems like maybe you are angry. It seems like maybe you are pulling back, isolating, and moving towards depression. I don't think that I was acknowledging God in everything that I was doing. You know, because at the end of the day, I ended up popping.
Sure.
I ended up punching a front door. And, you know, it's hard for me to believe that I'm acknowledging God in everything that I'm doing when that is the outcome of my actions.
Sure.
Yes.
So I'm thinking two things here.
Okay. Not three things?
Not three. The first thing is I can relate.
Thank you.
Yes.
I felt alone over here.
Just because you're doing all the talking.
I know, I won't shut up.
I can relate. I mean, I grew up with a dad who punched holes in walls. And so as an adult, I'm like, I'm not going to do that. That's scary. You know, like as a kid, being in that household, that's scary. You know, having a dad that's, you know, you don't know when they're going to pop, you know. Now, it doesn't mean that my anger hasn't come out in other ways because, you know, you mentioned shame and in my parenting, you know, the big frustration in my life has really been, you know, my son. Like, I love him, but, you know, he's a chip off the old block and he doesn't listen and has to do everything his way. And, you know, all the things that I was told about how I was when I was a kid. And so, you know, like I'm not proud of it, but like I've been excessively physical with him when I get frustrated. You know, I'm just like things that like after you do it, you're like, man, I really wish I hadn't done that. You know, like that's not the kind of dad I want to be.
Right.
And so, but it's the same issue. It's the same problem. You know, it's the taking on more, not trusting God, getting frustrated, trying to control my little world. And then not having the capacity to be able to do it. You know, I will say that the trip to Cabo gave me like an opportunity for a step back to kind of assess these things. You know, say like, what kind of man do I want to be? What kind of father do I want to be? What things do I need to get rid of that are overflowing my plate and causing me to live on the edge of, you know, popping? You know. Yeah. And just creating more room for like God to work instead of me filling every, you know, available aspect of my life and schedule and stuff. So hopefully that's a bit of a, you know, a turning point for me. Time will tell. But I've been much more intentional since I've been back when it comes to that, and I've noticed that my angry responses and yelling have been much less. You know, literally, you know, thank God for that. But I've also, part of that has been, okay, these things that I have not been making, you know, essential aspects of, you know, non-negotiables in my life, I'm making non-negotiables. And that's like a morning routine where I get up, I eat breakfast with my family, I do my quiet time. You know, I don't just jump right into work. And that's been helpful because it gives you some breathing room. Like you start with God's word, you start with like, you know, something that replenishes your soul and reminds you of your dependence on God. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of my thing on that. I mean, I've experienced that, and hopefully that's, you know, will become less and less as I mature and become more dependent on God. But it's also not really one of those things you ever like master. You never really fully arrive there. Like it requires a constant dependence, a constant reminder that you need God, that you can't take on all this stuff.
Right.
I guess my question to you is, as you've had a chance to reflect on this stuff, what have you learned? Like, what would you do differently next time to make sure you don't get to that place?
Yeah, I think that, weirdly enough, in the moment when I said to my wife, I'm going to pop, like, that was the right call. Like, I told her that was the right call. Like, I was being transparent. I was telling her, as best as I could, hey, I'm overwhelmed. Now, I think what I would do differently is, because you can't plan for the unexpected. So like I could never have planned for my daughter losing her bearded dragon. I could never have planned for that. But what I could have planned for and been more preemptive in is taking better rest, and recognizing and listening to the people that are close in my life, saying like, hey, are you taking care of yourself? Are you doing too much? And I think that had I been more, maybe less prideful in thinking like, no, I can handle all this. I'm getting adequate rest and whatnot. And I think had I paid attention to more of that and been humble and been acknowledging God in every way, I think I could have avoided this situation. It's not to say that I could have avoided some of the chaos like my daughter losing her bearded dragon, but I think that I wouldn't have been at a point where I was going to pop. So the last piece of this verse is, in all your ways acknowledge him, and it says he will direct your paths. So you've got these kind of three calls to action. Trust the Lord with all your heart. Don't lean on your own understanding. Acknowledge him in everything, and he will direct your path. So the verse wraps up with a promise, which I think at the end of the day, I need, as a dad, as a father, as a husband, I need to land in the promises of God. I need to know what the promises of God are. Those things need to be influential in my life, and they need to have significant positive repercussions on my actions. So if I believe that God has my best, if I believe that God is going to show up like as Scripture says, then I need to have that be infecting my spiritual DNA, as it were.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I guess as we kind of close up this episode, my thoughts kind of go to, obviously a big part of this is being in God's Word regularly, being dependent on God, which tends to be a little more of an ethereal thing, but practically speaking, you also mentioned, not being so prideful that you're trying to do this on your own. Yeah. So most of our listeners, I'd imagine, are married. So I mean, what's a conversation you could have with your spouse who is more than likely going to be the one that sees the rawest version of yourself, and can see the warning signs? What's a conversation you can have so they can help see these things that you may not see when you're in the thick of it?
Yeah, good question. I think what's been a really good rhythm for me with my wife has been able to get a regular date night. So that's not always the case. Sometimes we have to just roll with the time that we have allotted. So, some of the time it's we're sitting down and I'm debriefing, with my wife about my day and about the stress that I'm feeling. I'm being real. I'm saying like, here's where I'm overwhelmed. Here's what my thoughts look like. Here's where I'm being, tempted to engage in sin, because I'm feeling stressed.
Sure.
And oftentimes that's not always happening on a date because we just, we got kids.
Sure.
And time doesn't allot for that. So it's like when the kids are down and, we have some time like 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, we're able to have that conversation. And those have been really beneficial for me, really edifying for me, and it allows me closeness with my wife, and it actually makes me feel like I have an ally.
Sure.
Whereas there are times where I believe, and I think this is one of the kind of the ploys of Satan, is to isolate men to where they believe that they can do all things, but they obviously get to a point, where they're overwhelmed and they can't do all things,
Sure.
and then they feel like they're completely alone and that nobody's going to understand them. So those are the lies that are oftentimes bought and believed in, and
Sure.
I buy them hook, line, and sinker.
Sure, and that's a very popular ploy of Satan to just take men out of the fight. I mean, if you're out there as an island, and overwhelmed and taken out of the battle. I mean, in the context of of war, it's better. The enemy's goal is it's better to wound people than to kill them, because if you wound them, now you've taken 2 other people out of the fight who are going to be attending to that person. So, if Satan can wound us and not kill us, it can take more people out of the battle, because you're now incorporating more people in kind of your to deal with your wounding.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think about that. It takes out multiple people as opposed to one person.
Right.
Yeah.
And as fathers, like, it starts affecting and taking out our family, our wives, our children have to deal with our trying to be strong enough. So I mean, is that scary to be vulnerable and kind of confess to your wife, like, hey, this is what I'm struggling with. This is where I'm feeling weak and vulnerable. I mean,
it's really scary, man. It's really scary, because I do not. I would say this is true for all guys. Want to be seen as weak, and having that level of vulnerability, to where I say, I don't think I'm handling things well, or I don't think that I'm my mind is in a good space, because I think what that does, at least to me, and I probably venture to say a lot of guys, is that indicts their ability to provide. That kind of goes after that particular core. Like, men were put here, created to provide and to protect. And if I'm at a space as a husband and father where I feel like I'm overwhelmed and I can't do anything, then I feel like, why do I exist? Like, I'm not able to handle these things perfectly. And on a theoretical level, I know that I'm not supposed to handle these things perfectly.
Sure.
But on a distorted level, I believe that I can.
Sure. So she doesn't just turn to you and say, like, when you're being vulnerable and honest, she doesn't just turn to you and be like, stop being such a pussy.
Not yet. Not yet. Okay. But I'm always afraid. I am always afraid.
That's kind of the biggest fear.
Like, I'm always afraid that, like, I'm going to
turn on you.
Yeah, I'm going to get that kind of rejection.
Yeah.
And what's weird is I'm always surprised when I don't. Which is
kind of counterintuitive.
It is, because I feel like as a husband and father, I can't make a mistake. There's no room for me making a mistake. And I think that's exactly where Satan wants most men, is to believe that they can't make a mistake. But what room does that leave for Christ interacting in your life?
Sure.
And why would we need Christ if we never made mistakes? There wouldn't be a purpose for Christ.
Yeah. Well, I remember in my younger, Christian years, in my early 20s, I remember having this kind of epiphany when I was meeting with, a mentor of mine, and I realized that I was living out of this expectation of perfection, of, like, the shame when I failed, when I sinned, when, or whatever it was, and I had this kind of this epiphany of, like, wait a second, like, yeah, we're called to righteousness and stuff, but if we were able to attain perfection on our own strength, we wouldn't need Christ.
Yeah.
Like, God's calling is for us to be dependent and reliant on Him and obedient to Him. Yeah. Not that we can do everything perfectly on our own. Yeah. You mentioned kind of earlier that you felt some shame, like when you failed, when you punched the door and you had to explain to people. I was a dumbass and my anger got the best of me and I punched the door. Yeah. What do you do with that shame? When you do fail, when you realize you're not being reliant on God.
I think, and that's a good question, because I think that in my default response is, okay, I feel shame, is then to believe that there is shame. Is to function in a way where, like, it creates more shame, like shame begets shame. So
sure, we're tempted to hide.
Yeah,
like Adam did.
Yeah, like I wanna run, I wanna hide, I wanna cower. I wanna believe, like, well, shit, I didn't have it together, and I'm like, everybody's right for calling me out in that way, and I deserve this. Like, I can't tell you how many times, like, I was like, I don't want any sympathy from anybody, because, like, I did this to myself.
You deserve it.
I deserve this.
Yep.
Like, and that was a default response that I had, and so I think the shame piece, it's been a real strong temptation to just generate more shame, and to kind of isolate and be depressed. They're like, well, I kind of have to go and pay for the penance of my sins on my own, But the alternative response has been, and it's been challenging, is to go into God, go into Christ, and go, yeah, okay. There's a lot of different responses that I could have had.
Sure.
But I know that I'm forgiven. I know that I'm a child of God. This is my primary identity. I'm still called to worship. I'm still called to provide, and I'm still called to love my family and my wife, albeit imperfectly.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we're either going to fall down because of our own stupidity and sin, or we're going to be knocked down by the enemy in situations in life. But the important thing is that we allow God to pick us back up and say that, Jesus' death on the cross is enough for you. Is enough for your sin.
Yeah.
Enough for your folly.
And that's a good point. The sufficiency of Christ here is really, really huge. Mm-hmm. Really huge. And I've been made more aware of that in the last couple of weeks than I think I've been willing to acknowledge over the last several years. So, I mean, in some ways, there's some grace here, or a lot of grace, honestly, with breaking my hand and teaching me the sufficiency of Christ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. Well, hopefully our listeners got something out of this and learned you don't need to to pop and break your hand in order to learn dependence on God, hopefully. But it sounds like, in hindsight, God had a plan for you and bringing you closer to Him in this.
Well, I don't know that I have anything left to say on this matter. It's been vulnerable, I'll say that, to talk about this. Not in an extreme way, but it's been vulnerable, and so I appreciate you allowing me the space to talk about it.
Sure. No, I mean that's kind of what this podcast has become. It's just kind of a counseling session for us, and
yes.
we get other people get a look in on our session.
Yeah.
I guess I'll kind of close with one thing that I was thinking about, kind of reflecting on my little story from my early 20s, is that one of the things that I think is really unique about learning to be dependent on God is that it naturally takes away a lot of your pride and your need to be right, your need to appear a certain way to people. When you're trusting God, you can say, yeah, I was dumb. I hurt myself because of my anger, and you can be transparent instead of trying to save face. Mm-hmm. And it's not on you. Like, Jesus cleanses that, and He's enough for that, and which is a stark contrast from the world and people who don't have God and have and everything is rests on their shoulders. There is no way for them to save themselves, and so it's much more important for them to not admit fault and weakness and failure.
Yeah.
Like there's a huge freedom in us being like, yeah, I messed up, and by God's grace, I learned in that, and I'm becoming more Christ-like in that, as opposed to the need to continue to hide and wallow in our shame.
Yeah, sanctification is a daily thing, and I think that for the average Christian guy, which that's all of us, despite what I think about myself from time to time, is I am, you are, we all are, we're being sanctified every single day, and Christ's strength is being made much of in our weakness. Yeah.
It's good stuff, man. I got nothing else.
Well, as always, everybody that's listening, we love you. Thank you so much for following us and sending us messages. We really appreciate it. The reviews and all the nice words. We thank you for that. And as always, check us out on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. And hopefully you're enjoying the content. Please do hit us up. Let us know if there's any topics that you'd like us to cover. We're trying to get creative, and we've got a pretty neat one that's coming up that we're looking forward to sitting down with some guests and going over some cool stuff.
Yeah, some female guests.
Woo, female guests.
Different perspectives.
Different perspectives.
It's going to be fun.
Do check out some of the latest episodes. We just kind of put one up on staying together for the kids and getting divorced and and whatnot. And then we've got a couple of episodes recently on church community and church shopping. So those have been really cool episodes to kind of go back and listen to and look at. Do check out the Just Thinking podcast. I'm just going to tell you that's probably my top favorite podcast, but like just some awesome men of God exegeting scripture and cultural stuff. I mean, there's some heavy duty episodes out there, but please do check them out. And we love you. We care about you. We're praying for you. So till next time, stay cool.